Good morning. I'm so glad you braved the storm this morning to be in God's house. It's going to be an amazing day. It already is. It's the day the Lord has made. We are wrapping up our Flourish series today. And Flourish has been not only a teaching series, but a challenge to take bold steps forward in our faith, not only to see God's vision accomplished in our own lives, but to see God's vision for the watershed take another step forward. And so I'm excited about what God has done through this effort and all that God's doing in all of you. It's been amazing to be a part of. Today I want to talk to you about the fact that churches that flourish lead the community to flourish. And when the community flourishes, the kingdom of God is at hand. And people who wrestle with faith or with knowing Christ see all of a sudden these tangible signs of what life lived in faith looks like, and they give themselves to following Jesus. And it ripples out and it multiplies, and it's amazing. So that's where I want to focus today. And so our way in really is a story about a pastor that I admire deeply, a man named Pastor Kirby John Caldwell. Kirby John, you may know him. You may have seen him around. He's been the spiritual advisor to presidents, both Republican and Democrat. Who does that, right? He's spanned the aisle in that way and done extraordinary work. He has an economics background. He's worked on Wall Street and felt called to ministry and took a job at a 25-member church in Windsor Village 30 years ago. And Kirby John tells the story about when he went to this church. It didn't look like that, the picture that you see there. It looked much smaller. He looked in the sanctuary where these 25 members would gather in smaller iterations than that to worship. I mean, this church had a heyday and it had declined and was on its way to death. And Kirby John saw these pews and he saw cobwebs and pill bugs. And he said, I saw a pulpit and a part of a microphone. I don't know what that means, but there was a part of a microphone there. And he looked at it and he said, it's enough. It's enough. And he went and met with the leadership team at that church and he said, we're going to focus on three things here. And here are the three things. He said, we're going to have a strong education ministry, not just on Sunday, but every day of the week. We're going to focus on meeting the needs of people as we educate them. Because that's what John Wesley did, who was one of the founders of the Methodist movement. That's what Jesus did. He met physical, tangible needs of people. So we're going to do that. He said, two, we're going to have a winsome worship service. And can't you just hear Kirby John saying that? We're going to have a winsome worship service, which means it's going to be lively, it's going to be energetic, it's going to be exciting, it's going to heal, it's going to make a difference in the lives of people who gather. And he said, third, we're going to reach out to our children and our youth. That's where we're going to focus, those three things. And God's going to use that to make a difference. Well, since then, everything that Windsor does focuses outward. I'm going to read all these things or I'm going to miss them. He says they want to meet the social, spiritual, educational, emotional, relational, and cultural development needs of children, youth, adults, and families in central Southwest Houston. That's a mouthful. Did you know a church could do all that? Do you think a church is supposed to do all that? Well, Kirby John thought so. He still thinks so because he believed that Jesus lived so. And so they set to work. They have birthed over 70 ministries that help form the people of God to go outwards and be the hands and feet of Christ. And out of that effort, out of the work the Spirit's done among them, 9 nonprofit corporations have been birthed. Now, nobody, even an economist, doesn't go into a church and say, I want to birth 9 nonprofit organizations. They became necessary because of the work that God was doing through the people called Windsor Village. And so I'm not going to hit all of them, but I want to lift up some of the work that these nonprofits that a church began are doing. So one of them is called the Amani School. It offers kindergarten to 8th grade education to students who traditionally were on a pipeline to drop out of high school and relegated to a future of working hourly pay jobs throughout their career. Well, the Amani School is changing everything. And then they looked at that and they said, well, why don't we start Victory Prep School, a school for 7th through 12th graders to help them prepare to enter college and a career in business. Because you see, Windsor Village was an impoverished community at the time, and the pipeline, even for those who graduated from high school, were those same hourly wage jobs that didn't provide economic growth for the region or for individuals. And so he wanted to move the needle on that along with the church. Then they started the Kingdom Builders Center. In its first phase, built in 2007, this is a 183,000 square foot facility that's at the center of their community, a place to gather a place to educate, a place to help. He calls it the Family Life Center or living room for the community. 183,000 square feet. I'll just drop that there and let that do its work for a moment. Then they said, you know what, we need to be in the business of creating jobs, the business of economic empowerment. And so the church bought an old Kmart strip center. Y'all remember Kmart? Yeah, old school. Well, they did too. Well, they at least remembered Kmart's empty building. And so they built this, and what do? Well, they developed an event and venue center because that part of town didn't have one, so that they could employ people. And then they said, well, what do we do with the rest? Well, it's a private-public nonprofit partnership that employs people and serves over 11,000 families a month, creates nearly 400 jobs, and get this, out of this power center, there's an estimated economic impact of $15.5 million. Really? A church? Can a church do that? It just did, right? Windsor Village, yeah. Windsor Village UMC has. Well, there's another backstory too. So I showed you that Kingdom Builders Center, you know, that big giant church in the round, 180,000 square. We have 12,000 square feet here, y'all. Just wrap your mind around that for just a moment. So they identified the land that they wanted to build this Kingdom Builders Center. And it was 234 acres. And they wanted to just buy a parcel, but the developer, the person selling it, wouldn't divide it up. So they bought the whole tract. And then they said, okay, what do we do with 234 acres? They said, why don't we transform central southwest Houston? And so they built houses like you would find here in Tuscan Lakes, but 80% of the houses were considered affordable. It's not affordable housing. It's housing just like we have here, but for people who are stepping out of a life of perpetually renting into buying their homes. And they forged partnerships to help people get down payments in order to get into these homes, the homes that they could be proud of, that help them continue to build a life, economic empowerment. And it has transformed this community so much so, in fact, that other businesses have been attracted. Do you know that banks don't plant themselves generally in low-income areas? Well, he went out and recruited banks to come in. And that's created jobs. It's brought in other businesses, retail, restaurants, other things. And you could just imagine how this thing has spun out. They've even built a senior living center in Corinthian Point. Just an amazing testimony to what the church can do. Did you think churches could do that? They can. If they get really serious about being the hands and feet of Jesus for their neighborhoods, for their communities. And the Watershed can do it too. So here's what I want us to think about. Windsor Village epitomizes what it means to develop flourishing faith in individuals. Through over 70 ministries, they're developing a flourishing faith in all of their participants. Well, flourishing individuals lead to a flourishing church, and this flourishing church has literally transformed the community and made the signs of God's kingdom tangible and real. And I'm going to tease out, I'm not going to spoil their current membership level. I'm going to make you hang on till the end of the sermon for that. But man, it's grown from 25 to, right? So you'll just have to wait on that. Well, I want to tell you about the Watershed. We are known as a church that serves. We're known as a church that is outwardly facing. We're known as a church that exists to help shed Christ's love to those who do not know Christ or have been separated from Jesus for a long time and are just longing for that relationship. We have done something extraordinary because we've responded to the call of God. I want to introduce you to Dylan. Dylan's not a member of the Watershed. He's a member of First Methodist Dickinson. But he's developed a relationship with us and came and served during the shelter that we opened up for Hurricane Harvey. I want you to hear the community's impression of the Watershed through the eyes of somebody who's not a part of us, at least officially, and see the kind of difference that God's making through us. Check it out. Meet Dylan.
I'm Dylan Cumberland. I joined you guys when y'all were Red Cross shelter right after Hurricane Harvey. As one of the people that was not impacted by the flooding, my home church was, my family was, but I personally was not. It was very important to me to be able to give back, and immediately I had a working vehicle. When so many others had flooded, I had the time. My work was flooded. I couldn't get home. And it meant so much to me to be able to come to a church that I was familiar with, in that I've attended worship here before. I know Lance, I know Lowell, and to be able to interact and get that community experience from serving, getting to know and serve alongside the people that have gone here for years, for people that had just come in like I had, and to be treated like someone who was serving alongside. It didn't matter that I didn't go here. It didn't matter that I hardly knew anybody. We just all got to work, and that sense of community and camaraderie and Christian love uh, was so amazing, um, and so it was so neat to come in and get to actively be a part of that. And not being part of the watershed, to mean what it means to me to be the watershed is to go out and to spread the message of love and acceptance of Christ. That even in the midst of serving, when you're not having an overtly religious conversation with somebody, when you're just in my situation, when you're just giving somebody a meal, that's very actively being the hands and feet of Christ, of serving alongside those people. So to me, that's what it means to be the watershed, is just another way of saying to go out and be the light that Jesus calls us to be. Always when I had thought about the watershed, I had always known, just from the reputation within the community, even before I knew Lance, that this was a church that was severely motivated by a deep need to serve, and to serve the community, not to serve themselves. Coming from a church that's significantly older, it's very hard to have a paradigm shift within the congregation to try to motivate them to the level of service that the watershed exhibits so freely and openly already. The reputation definitely preceded itself, and knowing that they were so willing to give of their time, to give of their treasure, and to give of their service.
Now, the story of Windsor Village United Methodist Church seems extraordinary to so many, but I think we take for granted the fact that the story of the watershed is extremely significant to so many. What we do here is truly special. It's different. It's changing lives. It's outwardly oriented to transform the community and not focused inwardly, although formation is important, but always for the sake of being the hands and feet of Christ in the world. You are a part of something truly extraordinary, and our story is shaping lives and changing futures for Jesus Christ. And I want to say thank you for that. To hear that through Dylan's ears and voice is an amazing thing. Why don't I focus us today on Ezekiel's vision one more time? This has been our guiding text for the sermon series, and we've looked at it from many different angles. Today I want to read you verses 9 through 12, and I want to focus on the life that comes when the community centers itself on God and leads others to center themselves on God, and the hope and healing that comes from that. So if you have your Bibles, I invite you to turn with me to Ezekiel 47, verses 9 through 12, and we're going to read it from the Message this morning. Wherever the river flows, life will flourish, great schools of fish, because the river is turning the salt sea into fresh water. Where the river flows, life abounds. Fishermen will stand shoulder to shoulder along the shore, from the Engedi all the way north to the Eniglium, casting their nets. The sea will teem with fish of all kinds, like the fish of the great Mediterranean. The swamps and marshes won't become fresh, they'll stay salty. But the river itself on both banks will grow fruit trees of all kinds. Their leaves won't wither, their fruit won't fail. Every month they'll bear fresh fruit, because the river from the sanctuary flows to them. Their fruit will be for food, and their leaves for healing. This is God's word for us today. Thanks be to God. So I want to focus on the life that flows from the temple, the life that centers people on God and God's will and God's word and God's law, all those great things. I can remember as a young boy how I loved spending time with my dad and loved fishing. My family grew up, we had some land that my great-grandparents owned on their farm near the Tres Palacios River in South Texas, and I spent many a weekend there staying in an RV right on the river. And so we enjoyed boating and water skiing and fishing and all the things you do there, even getting in a little canoe and going down the sloughs that ran through our pasture land. But I can remember that there were times there were a lot of times that there weren't a lot of fish to catch. But there were some times when the community got excited about the fish. And we would go and we'd visit. My uncle would say, okay, if you just get up at this time and you go to this place and you sit here and you use this bait, the fish will practically jump in your boat. I was about an 8-year-old boy at the time, and that sounded great because who wants to fish when the fish aren't biting? That's not a lot of fun. And so, because you don't want to scare them away by talking, so for a little boy to sit there in silence, torture, right? Torture. And so I can remember particular days when my dad would say, okay, we're going to get up and go fishing, but we need to go before the sun comes up. Well, as a little boy, how excited do you think I was to get up before the sun came up? Not at all, right? But with the promise that the fish would practically jump in the boat, I was hooked. No pun intended. Well, maybe a little bit of intention there. And so I did. And we got out in the boat and we trolled because we didn't want the big motor to wake up all the fish, or at least to scare them away. And so we trolled to that perfect spot where all those fish were going to practically jump into the boat. And so there we were before the sun came up, casting our lines, reeling them in. Casting our lines, reeling them in. Nothing. I can remember thinking, maybe the fish are still sleeping. I don't know. When do fish sleep? I still don't know. And so we did. I watched the sun dawn on the horizon, still casting the line in, reeling it back. Nothing. And the sun got higher in the sky, still no fish. I'm sitting here going, I could be sleeping right now. And we kept doing it, and it must have gotten to be about noon because I can remember the warm sun beating down on us about midway up in the sky and going back empty-handed. How excited do you think I would be to get up another day before the sun came up to go catch fish? Not at all. But I did it repeatedly because I still looked forward with hope to the promise that the fish indeed would literally jump into our boat, even if they never did. Well, Ezekiel writes this passage in exile. The homeland, Jerusalem, the temple lay in destruction. People, survivors, are in Babylon, apart from the temple, the center of their religious life, apart from the Word of God, but still looking forward with hope to the restoration of Jerusalem and to one day being able to return. Ezekiel's vision was one that said, we will indeed return from Babylon. We will indeed rebuild the temple. And that temple will become not only the center of our life as God's people, but it will draw others to God and be a place of blessing in all of the dead, parched, dry places that lie beyond. That is God's promise to us. That is our hope that we long for and look forward to. And so I've got this picture. This is an artist's rendering, just one artist's rendering of Ezekiel's vision. At the top of the picture, you'll see the Mediterranean Sea. That's the place where folks would go and get their fish to feed the communities. There in kind of the middle, upper end of the middle of the map is Jerusalem and the Temple Mount. So you see water flowing from the Mediterranean toward the temple. And then you see kind of at the bottom, running diagonally, is the Dead Sea. Literally the lowest spot on the globe, a place of stagnation, of marsh, of death. Nothing could live. This area could not support life. And the area between the temple and the Dead Sea was also a dry, parched land. Desert, wilderness. People knew that they couldn't find life there. So in a way, Ezekiel's vision might sound absurd. What do you mean fruit trees? What do you mean fish? Have you ever been down to the Dead Sea? But he said, no. One day the temple will be rebuilt. God will be the center of our lives, and we will take that life out to bring healing to the broken places. And the people held on to that vision. Could you imagine this coming to pass? Fishermen in the Dead Sea? It would have been the laughingstock, right? One fisherman gets told, hey, have you been to the Dead Sea lately? There's actually fish in it. No way. So out of curiosity, he gets up one morning and goes, and lo and behold, he catches some fish. And so he goes back to his buddies and says, hey, you'll never guess where I caught this boatload of fish. The Dead Sea. No, get out of here. What? You're crazy. You're a crackpot. There's nothing alive in the Dead Sea. Have you smelled it? No, you got to go back, the fisherman says. You'll see. What a waste of time. I'm not taking you seriously. So he recruits a friend and he goes, and sure enough, they literally jump into the boat. And so 2 become 4, and 4 become 8, and people begin to believe this story of life where there had been death. And Ezekiel's vision says that the fishermen stand from the Engilium, which is right where the river from the temple empties into the Dead Sea, all the way down to the Engadi, which is the kind of the southern or southernmost region of the North Dead Sea. So a big geographic area. So imagine a place that couldn't support life, all of a sudden fishermen are lined up for miles and miles catching a source of life and nourishment. Pretty incredible, right? But that's not all. Where the river flows from this temple, fruit trees spring up along the banks. That's what you see in this picture. It almost looks like rocks along this path, this squiggly line. Well, those are trees beside a river in a place of wilderness and death. And these aren't only trees that attract birds and life, but these are fruit-bearing trees that provide nourishment and food for those who gather around it. What he's saying is, where there once was no life, now there is life. Where there once was parched land, now there is water standing. Do you see this vision? Life abounds when the people of God center themselves on God and take God's word out to center others on God as well. That's Ezekiel's vision, and it is extraordinary. Notice something from this passage before I move on. This life that Ezekiel describes, it's not just spiritual. You know, when we think about church, quite often we think about praying, singing, reading God's word, studying the word together. That's what we do when we gather, and those are activities that only the church can undertake. That's what God has uniquely positioned us for. But that's not the rest of the story. The rest of the story lies beyond the walls. That those of us who are nourished with the life of God, those of us who center ourselves on God and God's purposes for the world and God's will and God's word, we are changed from the inside out to make a difference in the physical world. Because when people begin to see the world changed by those who have been changed already by God, they get a taste of the kingdom of heaven. All of a sudden, what only was empty words becomes reality. And people go, well, I want that. You mean I can go to Christ and get life? Show me that life. I've never experienced anything like this. My soul is dry and cracked. It hasn't been nourished for years. And we as the people of God say, come and see. And that's what brings life. That the internal spiritual transformation leads to external physical flourishing. And that's the vision that Ezekiel lifts up for us today. Windsor Village UMC has 70 different ministries to form the people of God to be the hands and feet of Christ. Between worship, ministries for children, all the way up through adults and families, care and coaching ministries for people. They have 2,500 volunteers who impact over 182,000 people a month. A month. Just think about that for just a moment. Over 2,500 volunteers impacting the lives of over 182,000 people a month. And why would that many people come? Because they see the life of God lived through the people of God, and it is changing lives. That's just the work of the church, to form people in the faith. I haven't even given you the statistics yet for the outreach of these people when they leave the sanctuary and go out into the world. It is extraordinary. So in this passage, Ezekiel gives people hope in exile, that God will keep God's promises, that God will restore and become the center of our lives again, and that the world will come and find healing and hope and nourishment, and it's amazing. Well, Jeremiah gives us a picture. If you zoom in on this vision of the life that's coming from the temple, that's what we get from Jeremiah. But his situation's a little bit different. Jeremiah is not writing from exile. Jeremiah is penning these words literally hours before the army comes and invades and ravages Jerusalem. They're at hand. They're on their way. There is no hope or no escape at this point. Jeremiah knows it, but maybe all the people didn't. And I wonder, as Jeremiah speaks these words before this imminent act, what the people were thinking. Now, I would commend to you Jeremiah 30 through 32, because this passage I'm about to read is a part of a broader unit, and chapter 32 is nothing short of breathtaking. It is truly extraordinary as this army is at hand. I would commend that to you to read this week. But I want to focus for you on 30 for just a moment, because it's pretty awesome stuff. So imagine the Babylonian army is on the move, headed toward Jerusalem, and Jeremiah is given these words by God. Listen to this. I'll turn things around for Jacob. I'll compassionately come in and rebuild homes. The town will be rebuilt on its old foundations. The mansions will be splendid again. Thanksgivings will pour out of the windows. Laughter will spill through the doors. Things will get better and better. Depression days are over. They'll thrive. They'll flourish. The days of contempt will be over. One of their own people shall be their leader. Their ruler will come from their own ranks. I'll grant him free and easy access to me. Would anyone dare to do this on his own? To enter my presence uninvited? God's decree. And that's it. You'll be my very own people. I'll be your very own God. It's literally hours before the army comes in and ravages the city, and there's death and destruction. People are carried off into Babylon. Ugly, ugly thing. But there's some from whom still probably didn't even believe that these events were going to happen. And I almost think that here Jeremiah is almost like Noah. There's warnings. Rain is going to come. And here's Noah building a boat. I'm channeling my inner Bill Cosby here. You've heard that skit. And he's building this ark, and everybody's going, Noah, what are you doing? I'm building an ark. Why? It hadn't rained in a long time. It's going to. Haven't you heard? There's a lot of rain in the forecast. You're going to want to be on this thing. You're crazy. I imagine that there was a little bit of you're crazy with Jeremiah in this moment. What do you mean the mansions are going to be rebuilt? What do you mean the devastations are going to be over? What do you mean the depression days are over? Things are great right now. Well, what we didn't read was the part above verse 18, where God warned, because you failed to turn, because of your sinfulness, because of the repeated warnings that you haven't taken seriously, this will happen. But I will restore. So this is a word of hope even before the destruction begins. And the picture is that of flourishing once again, even better than things were before. Because at this point, they didn't have one of their own on the throne, right? But they're promised a ruler that comes from their own people. This whole story is amazing. And what it reminds me of is Hurricane Harvey, right? We saw the predictions. The storm was going this way and that. It was coming, then it wasn't, then it was again. And then, boy, it sat over us for a long time and dumped a bunch of rain, right? And we were told to stay in place. And I remember as the rains were falling, I preached the Sunday after the storm that I'd seen this rainbow in the clouds before the rain began, and I knew God was going to keep God's promise to us. And there was a lot of devastation and a lot of destruction, but you know what else there was? Hope, community, life. It's as if those waters were cleansing. Now I know because we were there. We were here as a shelter. We were literally able to open up as people were being rescued from the floodwaters to house them. I will forever see this room filled with cots and the smell of folks coming in from floodwaters, right? I mean, it's life-changing. There's never been anything like it. And we tracked with those folks until they had a plan for their next step. And we're continuing to keep in touch with them as they restore their homes. God was able to allow us to do that, and we were able to speak words. You don't know what destruction you're going back to, but you know what? There is hope. There is healing. Your home will be rebuilt because you are not alone. You are not alone. And we've experienced this. As soon as people were able to get back into their homes, I saw neighbors that had never spoken to each other before coming together in the middle of the road saying, can you believe this? What are you going to do? What do we do first? Where do we begin? I've seen people, I've prayed with many of you in your homes when you were facing those first moments going, I don't even know where to begin. And I've sat and prayed in living rooms and literally seen people show up at the door that you've never met saying, we're here, how can we help? I don't know what to do first. We do. And as an answer to that prayer, God sent people. Isn't that extraordinary? And I've seen as home after home of stranger after stranger has been mucked out by strangers that have come from far and near who have helped commit themselves to this work. And now homes are drying out, and we're waiting for things like FEMA and SBA and moisture levels to go down and all of that other stuff. And many of us are getting antsy. I'm ready for things to be back to the way they were. And this word from Jeremiah holds a promise that not only will things be restored and rebuilt, but they'll be better than they were before. Do you know how I know that? Because now we're one. Now we're in community with one another. Now we've come out of our our backyards into our front yards. Now we've talked with one another. Now the church has gotten into the neighborhood and has brought Christ to the center where you live and work and play. Depression days are over. You'll thrive. You'll flourish. And with Jeremiah, do you know how we know that? Because you are not alone. You're not alone. Can a church be a part of bringing this kind of hope? We were, and we will continue to be. And it's an amazing thing. Well, this is Ezekiel's vision that flows from the faith of the people centering their lives on God. It was also Kirby John Caldwell's vision. This year, Kirby John celebrates 30 years of ministry at Windsor Village United Methodist Church. I've told you about their community development work and how many jobs that they've created, all of that. But did you know that they've grown from 25 members to over 17,000 members? They have, on Sunday morning, 6,500 people on average in worship. Now, I'm not saying that to say, we're going to grow to 17,000. That's not our vision. But I am saying that when you get serious about doing the work of God, forming yourself in God's way according to God's word, and going out and being the hands and feet of Christ, you better be ready, because God's going to gather those folks at our doorstep. And they're going to come ready to learn the way and the will of God. And we've got to be ready to reach them and to connect them. We've got to know that when we get serious about doing God's work beyond these walls, that our 285-seat sanctuary is not going to be enough for the people that God's going to gather up. Because the unique calling and vocation of the church is to go and make God's kingdom tangible, and then to create connection for people to come and know Jesus better. So we got to be ready, and that's where 1500 is born. It's not about growth for growth's sake. It's a challenge to say, if we get serious about our DNA to serve, we better be ready to form people in the faith. And that's what this is all about. And I am so excited. You know, Windsor Village is not only the fastest growing church in United Methodism, it's one of the fastest growing Protestant churches in America, just because they're doing the will of God. Get ready. God is doing an amazing thing. So that leads us to 2018. It's going to be a watershed year, no pun intended, it was intended, for the life of our church. Things are going to break loose. This vision that we've discerned that God has given us, that we unanimously voted in and enacted in March, we're taking the first bold steps into that vision. We know to grow to a bigger worshiping facility in 6 years or so, we're going to need to be able to support a bigger budget. And so we're taking steps to grow the budget so that we can grow ministries that connect people. And our big focus for 2018 is growing as disciples. We're going to grow as disciples next year. And specifically in the area of community flourishing, we're going to do so by strong community partnerships, specifically with our local schools. We've been growing in our connection with Go Forth Elementary just right down the road. We dream of a mentoring relationship with them where we sit and read with students who are considered to be at risk. Did you know that if you can get a student up to reading level by third grade, the chances of them going to prison are dramatically reduced? Did you know that the church could have a part of reducing the pipeline to prison? We can, and we will. And through this partnership where people live, work, and play, we're going to be a part of bringing hope to where people are struggling the most. Schools affect most every family who live around them. And if there's a need, our dream is for the school to say, hey, we've got a family who's struggling with X, but we know somebody who can help. Watershed, what can you do? And we can say, we can do something about that. And then we grow to meet the spiritual and physical needs of that neighborhood that gathers around that school, and it just multiplies and multiplies. Amazing things happen when we become the hands and feet of Christ. But friends, we are the church. Nobody else is the church for you. You are part of the body of Christ, and we're only as strong as we are together. And so we need you to help this bold vision become reality. I've been asking you throughout these series to take your next bold steps in the faith through prayer, through worship, through the study of God's Word, through serving, and through giving. And today, we have the opportunity to make a commitment to Christ to support the 2018 budget. We haven't had the history here of doing a stewardship campaign. We're church different. And a lot of us have been in churches where we feel like all they talk about is money. And so we intentionally haven't done a stewardship campaign up to this point. But you know, my heart has been burdened because as we grow as disciples, which is what we're all about here, one of the disciplines that we develop, and it's throughout the scriptures more than any other single topic, it's the ministry of stewardship. Understanding that all of the resources that God has blessed us with are not ours, they're God's, and we steward them so that they have maximum impact. And the scriptures time and time again talk about, as you're faithful with little, God makes you faithful in much. Look at Windsor Village. Kirby John helped lead their leadership team and then the congregation to be faithful with what they had given, and all of a sudden they're developing neighborhoods and they're developing jobs, and you see? But that only happens through the generosity and the flourishing faith of individuals that come together to be the hands and feet of Christ in the world. And so, in just a moment, I'm going to lead us in a brief time of prayer. We're going to pass the baskets here to collect our offering for today, to support the ministry and mission of the church today. Then, I'm going to invite you forward as we play a video to come and give your commitment for tomorrow, for 2018. To see the vision accomplished here next year. And then we're going to do a prayer huddle after the worship service outside. Well, it's pretty nasty out there, so we're going to huddle up in here before we sing our final song. So that's what we have to come. But before we do that, I want you to hear from Dylan one last time about the difference you all are making in the world. Check this out.
For me, my idea of the perfect church in this world is one that is heavily motivated by service, one that does not treat church as something that you do for an hour on Sunday morning or an hour on Wednesday in a small group if you're an overachiever as a church person. It's one that will proudly wear something that identifies you as a Christian, knowing full well that you are going to back that up, that you're something that Jesus would be proud to call a Christian, that through your behavior and through your service, that's something that you know that Christ is proud of. And too frequently, I feel that that's not the case. That not just in serving, but in how you treat the average person. And that's something that I definitely like about the watershed, that when you walk in, you're treated as though you've been coming all the time, that you are welcomed, and you know that regardless of who you sit next to, it's going to be an enjoyable experience, that you're going to feel God's presence in the worship there, and that you're invited to go and serve along with them in whatever capacity you can. And to me, that's what the perfect church would look like, is one where you know that when you walk in the doors, you're accepted for who you are and as you are, that everyone meets you where you're at, but has no interest in leaving you where you are, and taking you along on the journey with them. And to me, that's what the church is supposed to be. Meeting people where they're at, but not leaving them there, because that's certainly not what Jesus does.
So friends, what God is doing through the watershed is truly extraordinary because of your faith. And now we have the opportunity to step into 2018 boldly, to shed God's love, and to bring hope and healing to our community. Let's do this together. May it be so.